Andrew Little standing by. He's going to join us in about 90 seconds to discuss this announcement from Bill English. He's grasped the political football of superannuation, announced that the pension age is going up to 67. The age of eligibility will rise gradually from 2037, 6-month increments, and the changes won't affect anyone born before June 1972. Lots of unkind suggestions coming in about that, and baby boomers via email, etc. Bill English says the government also plans to double the residency requirements for super, so applicants would have to have lived in New Zealand for 20 years. The law will be changed next year after the general election, if of course Nationals still have the majority in government. At his post-cabinet press conference, Mr English said life expectancy had increased by 12 years in the past 60 years, and living longer was driving up the cost of NZ Super.
Cabinet today decided to progressively increase the age of eligibility for New Zealand Super to 67, starting in 20 years' time. The Retirement Commissioner recently recommended increasing the age from 2027. However, we believe that a longer adjustment period is fairer because it gives affected families and individuals more time to plan for their futures. The change will bring New Zealand into line with other countries like Australia, the United Kingdom, Denmark, Germany and United States, which are all moving to the age of 67. The change will initially save about $4 billion a year. Cabinet also decided to change the residency requirement for eligibility for New Zealand Super from 10 years to 20 years. The change will apply to people arriving in New Zealand after the legislation is passed. Other aspects of New Zealand Super, such as indexing payments to the average wage and universal entitlement without means testing, will remain unchanged. The changes we've announced, which we will legislate for next year, will more fairly spread the costs and benefits of New Zealand Super between generations, ensure the scheme remains affordable into the future, and give people time to adjust.
Bill English speaking at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. We've got a Māori perspective on this coming up because Māori life expectancy is still 7 years shorter than non-Māori life expectancy. So what does the Māori Party think of this? But before that, let's go to the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Little, Labour Party leader, who joins us on the phone now. Are you there, Mr Little?
I'm here, Mr Campbell.
Yeah, this is odd, isn't it, calling each other Mr, but it's nice to talk to you, whatever we call each other. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this?
I think if the case for the argument is about affordability, there's something that the government could do right now, not wait till next year, not wait till 2041, and that is resume contributions to the New Zealand Super Fund. This government hasn't put a single extra dollar into that fund since they became government. That fund's now $20 billion behind what it would be had they continued contributions.
Okay, fair point. But let's speak to the age of eligibility, because Labor went into the last election with this policy, right, raising the age to 67.
We went into the last 2 elections with this policy. I stood for the leadership of the party on the grounds that I don't support it and will change it, and that is now the Labor position. And I have that view because of the 20 years I spent working alongside working New Zealanders, many of whom struggle to get to 65 now to retire, and should not be in the position of having to work even more years before they get their access to superannuation.
Okay, so your argument is simply that the people who need superannuation most, as a general rule of thumb, live the shortest after they reach the age of eligibility.
Well, not live the shortest, but they are doing physical work. I mean, the classic example came when I met a lines mechanic a few years ago. These are the guys that shimmy up the poles to keep the cables in place and the power running, and they don't do it just when the weather's fine. They do it when it's at its worst. He was 64 at the time, and he said to me he'd just been asked by his employer to work till he was 70, and he told me, look, he struggles to do the job then, at the age of 64, and he just could not see how he could work those extra years.
Okay, this is an interesting situation. So John Key wouldn't raise the age, and he's gone, and Bill English is. Labor wanted to raise the age, but David Cunliffe is gone, and now you're saying no. Does this speak to the politics in all of this? In other words, we did an interview with Michael Little before Bill English's announcement. It was immediately rendered obsolete by Bill English's announcement. But what Michael Littlewood said is the real problem with superannuation is you can't persuade political parties not to be partisan about it.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think that's at all fair. I draw on my experience. I draw on my experience of the lived experience of many working New Zealanders who struggle to get to the age of 65 now. And it's all very well saying, life expectancy is being pushed out, and it is, but bodies are still wearing out at pretty much the same rate as they always did. You can't work beyond your mid-60s if you've spent a lifetime doing hard physical work, and you shouldn't then have to wait an extra few years before you qualify for access to superannuation.
Okay, what about the fiscals? And it's the fiscals that people use as the argument, really, to justify raising the age to 67. Diane Maxwell, who is the Retirement Commissioner, says it's a no-brainer. You've got to put it up to 67. If we look, let's just look at it as a percentage of GDP. If we look at it at the moment, it's going to increase by about 60% as a percentage of GDP between now and 2060. We are shouldering people with a tax burden that lots of people are saying they simply can't meet. Government debt will rise. We simply can't afford to pay superannuation to people from the age of 65 as more and more people collect it.
So, the government is saying today that the impact on them is a saving of roughly 0.5% of GDP. So, actually, in the bigger scheme of things, that is not huge, and it is not a material saving overall. So you're saying we can. So you're saying we can afford to pay super at 65 as far out as 2040. And I think the other point I was going to make is that if you have a look at those calculations, they make very conservative assumptions about GDP growth, and you've got to look under that. There's no question. We need to change our economic profile. We need an economic strategy that's about attracting investment into the high margin, high value, high wage sort of jobs. That makes a difference to GDP. So I don't accept the sort of more or less static economic analysis that says that, GDP is only going to grow.
It's funny because David Cunliffe was running the fiscals, wasn't he? He was saying we can't long-term Treasury projections mean we can't afford this. Now, I know you're not David Cunliffe, and Bill English isn't John Key, and you're entirely entitled to change your party's policies. But the fiscals haven't changed. The Treasury projections remain the same. Super is expensive. Yeah, no, so the Treasury projections are that they assume, very, very conservative figures about GDP growth. In the end, this isn't just about that, though. It is about fairness. And I think others have made the comment too about if you have those born after 1972 are going to carry the cost of this. That is the same generation who missed out on free education. They've missed out on housing at the moment, and now they're being told they're going to have to work extra before they get access to superannuation. Everything about that age cohort is sort of turned against them. I don't accept that it is necessary. I accept that we can afford New Zealand superannuation. It is a question of priorities. It's a question of fairness too, and I stick by that. Andrew Little, Leader of the Labour Party, thank you for joining us live on the phone.